She's one of the most recognizable images in American history. A woman in a red polka dot bandana, flexing her arm, declaring, "We can do it." But who was Rosie the Riveter? And more importantly, who were the millions of real women she represented? This is the story of how American women answered their nation's call during World War II, transforming not just the war effort, but the very fabric of American society. It's a story of courage, sacrifice, and a revolution that would echo through generations. To understand the magnitude of what these women accomplished, we need to understand the world they came from. In 1940, before America entered World War II, the landscape of women's work looked vastly different from today. Only about 27% of American women worked outside the home. Those who did were largely concentrated in what were considered appropriate female occupations, and teachers, nurses, secretaries, domestic workers, and textile employees. And the idea of a woman operating a drill press, welding aircraft fuselages, or building tanks was nearly unthinkable. The prevailing social attitudes were clear. A woman's place was in the home, raising children and supporting her husband. Heavy industrial work was considered too dangerous, too demanding, and frankly, too masculine for women. Factory managers believed women lacked the physical strength and mechanical aptitude for such work. But everything was about to change. On December 7th, 1941, Japanese forces attacked Pearl Harbor. Within days, America declared war on Japan, and subsequently on Germany and Italy. Suddenly, the United States faced a challenge, unlike any in its history, fighting a massive two-front war across both the Pacific and Europe. Young men rushed to enlistment offices. Eventually, over 16 million American men would serve in uniform. But this created an enormous problem on the home front. Who would build the tanks, planes, ships, and ammunition these soldiers needed? The answer would require a dramatic reimagining of who could do what in American society. By 1942, American industry faced a critical labor shortage. The government and private manufacturers launched an unprecedented recruitment campaign targeting women. But they faced significant resistance, both from the women themselves and from society at large. Initial campaigns were tentative. Advertisements assured women that factory work wouldn't compromise their femininity. They emphasized that operating a factory machine was really just like using a domestic sewing machine or vacuum cleaner. The work was framed as temporary patriotic duty, not a permanent career change. This is where the image of Rosie the Riveter began to emerge. Though the name and image came from multiple sources, she became a powerful symbol. Strong, capable, yet still distinctly feminine. She wore makeup and kept her hair neat under a protective bandana. The message was clear. You could help win the war without giving up being a woman. In 1942, a popular song called Rosie the Riveter played on radios across America. The lyrics told of Rosie working on an assembly line, making history, working for victory. The song captured the public imagination. Around the same time, the Westinghouse Company commissioned artist J. Howard Miller to create a motivational poster for their workers. The result was the image we know today. A determined woman in blue coveralls and red bandana, rolling up her sleeve. Though this poster wasn't widely seen during the war itself, it would later become the definitive image of Rosie the Riveter. Slowly, then rapidly, women responded. Some needed the income, especially military wives whose husbands' pay barely covered expenses. Others felt a genuine patriotic duty. Many simply wanted adventure and opportunity beyond domestic life. Whatever their motivation, by the millions, they came. Between 1940 and 1945, the number of women in the workforce increased by more than 6 million. By 1945, women made up 37% of the civilian labor force. In war, industries, specifically women's participation, skyrocketed from almost nothing to representing a significant portion of workers in aircraft manufacturing, shipbuilding, and munitions production. But what was the actual experience like for these women? The propaganda posters showed smiling, confident workers. The reality was far more complex. First came training. Most women had never operated industrial machinery. They learned quickly. Training programs, some lasting just days or weeks, taught the basics of welding, riveting, assembly work, and machine operation. The women proved remarkably capable students, often surpassing expectations. The work itself was demanding. Aircraft factories required precision and attention to detail. A single, misplaced rivet could cause catastrophic failure. Women worked with heavy materials, operated powerful machinery, and endured long shifts, often 10 to 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. Welders worked in shipyards, creating the Liberty ships and naval vessels that would carry troops and supplies across oceans. The work was hot, requiring heavy protective gear. Sparks flew constantly. The noise was deafening. In munitions factories, women assembled bombs, shells, and bullets. The work was dangerous. Explosives were unpredictable. Several major accidents during the war killed and injured workers, many of them women. The workforce was remarkably diverse, though still segregated in many places. White women, black women, Mexican-American women, and Native American women all contributed. However, black women often faced double discrimination, relegated to the most difficult, dangerous, or menial positions, even within war industries. Women workers faced constant skepticism. Male co-workers sometimes resented them, viewing them as temporary intruders in masculine space. Supervisors questioned their commitment and capability. Sexual harassment was common and rarely addressed. Working mothers faced particular challenges. Some companies and government agencies established childcare centers, but these were far from universal. Many women worked long factory shifts, then came home to full domestic responsibilities. Extended family networks became crucial for childcare. Despite the dangers, safety equipment was often inadequate or non-existent. Protective gear designed for men didn't fit women properly. Hair getting caught in machinery was a real hazard, hence the iconic bandanas and hairnets. Yet, despite all these challenges, women excelled. Production records were shattered. In aircraft manufacturing, where women eventually comprised up to 65% of the workforce, America produced nearly 300,000 military aircraft during the war. Women built the B-17 Flying Fortresses, the B-29 Superfortresses, the P-51 Mustangs that dominated the skies over Europe and the Pacific. The transformation wasn't limited to factory work. Women entered nearly every sector of the economy in unprecedented numbers and roles. They drove trucks and buses. They worked as railroad conductors and mechanics. Some became lumberjacks, known as lumberettes, harvesting timber, crucial for war construction. On farms across America, the Women's Land Army recruited women to work in agriculture, replacing male farm workers who'd gone to war. They picked crops, operated tractors, and kept America's food supply flowing. In offices, women moved beyond secretarial work into management and professional positions previously reserved for men. They became accountants, journalists, scientists, and engineers. Some women even flew military aircraft. The Women Air Force Service Pilots, or WASPS, ferried planes from factories to military bases, tested aircraft, and trained male pilots. Though not officially granted military status until decades later, they performed dangerous work, crucial to the war effort. For many women, this period represented the first time they'd earned their own substantial income, made independent decisions, or experienced life beyond their hometowns. Personal accounts from the era speak of excitement, exhaustion, pride, and transformation. The social impact rippled outward. Women in work pants became a common sight. The idea of appropriate feminine behavior expanded. Women proved they could handle physical labor, technical complexity, and professional responsibility. In May 1945, Germany surrendered. In August, Japan followed suit. World War II was over. America had won, and women's industrial labor had been absolutely critical to that victory. But what would happen now? Almost immediately, the message changed. Posters that had urged women to work now celebrated domesticity. Magazine articles advised women on how to redecorate homes and please returning husbands. The cultural narrative shifted dramatically. Women should step aside and return to traditional roles, making room for male veterans in the workforce. Millions of women did leave industrial work, some by choice, many not. Companies laid off women en masse, even when they wanted to continue working. Union seniority systems, which favored male workers, pushed women out. By the end of 1946, women's participation in heavy industry had dropped precipitously. The 1950s would become known for an intense focus on domesticity. The suburban ideal, the nuclear family, the stay-at-home mother became cultural touchstones. To many observers, it seemed the wartime gains had vanished almost overnight. But the reality was more complex. While women left heavy industry, overall female workforce participation didn't return to pre-war levels. Women who'd tasted independence and earned substantial wages didn't simply forget that experience. Many continued working, though often in lower-paid, traditionally female occupations. Former war workers carried those experiences throughout their lives. They'd proven to themselves and to society that women could do far more than conventional wisdom suggested. They'd earned money, gained skills, and discovered capabilities they hadn't known they possessed. These experiences planted seeds. When the women's liberation movement emerged in the 1960s and 70s, many of its leaders and participants were women who'd worked during the war or daughters of women who had. The war had demonstrated that limitations on women's capabilities were social constructs, not biological facts. So, what is Rosie the Riveter's true legacy? How did those 4 years of wartime work change America? First, there's the economic impact. While the immediate post-war period saw women pushed out of high-paying industrial jobs, the long-term trend was clear. Women's workforce participation continued to climb throughout the second half of the 20th century. By the year 2000, nearly 60% of American women worked outside the home. The war had fundamentally altered expectations and possibilities. The war years helped set the stage for legal changes. The Equal Pay Act of 1963 and Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which prohibited employment discrimination based on sex, had roots in the wartime demonstration that women could perform the same work as men. Culturally, Rosie represented a powerful counter-narrative to traditional gender limitations. Even though the image itself wasn't widely recognized during the war, its later adoption by feminist movements in the 1970s and 80s made it iconic. The "We Can Do It" poster became a symbol of female empowerment, appearing on everything from protest signs to lunchboxes. For individual families, the impact was profound. Women who'd worked during the war often encouraged their daughters to pursue education and careers. They shared stories of what they'd accomplished, instilling confidence and ambition in the next generation. Recognition of these contributions came slowly. In 1999, Congress finally granted military veteran status to the Women Air Force Service pilots. Memorials and museums dedicated to women's war work have been established across the country. In 2000, a Rosie the Riveter National Historical Park was created in Richmond, California, site of major wartime shipyards. Of course, challenges remain. Women still face workplace discrimination and wage gaps. The industries women proved they could excel in during the war, like manufacturing and engineering, remain male-dominated. But the fundamental question has been answered. Can women do this work? Absolutely. Today's equivalents to Rosie the Riveter are everywhere. Women in construction, women in technology, women in space programs, women in military combat roles, women in every field that was once considered exclusively male territory. They stand on the shoulders of those wartime workers who proved it was possible. Rosie the Riveter wasn't a single person. She was millions of women who, when their country needed them, proved what they could do. They built the planes, the ships, the weapons that helped win the most consequential war in human history. Many of these women lived well into the 21st century. When interviewed in their later years, they spoke with pride about their wartime service. They'd been part of something larger than themselves. They'd helped save the world. The image of Rosie, with her rolled-up sleeve and determined expression, endures because it represents a truth these women proved. When given the opportunity, women are capable of anything. That lesson, learned in the factories and shipyards of World War II America, continues to resonate today.